Well, hello there, my friends. Good morning, everybody. Welcome on into Arcadia's Silverland. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. And fortunately, I am joined by a dear friend of mine, Jorge Ramiro Monroy. Jorge, I got to say, I want to thank you for being here with me today because I am certainly flummoxed by the action out of the Federal Reserve and the world in the last couple hours. There's
Yes.
Jerome Powell. Now, I hope you're not, first of all, excuse my crude manners. Welcome on in, sir. How are you today?
Yeah, very well, thank you. I have
How
to
are
say,
you,
Chris,
Jorge?
I've been glued to your channel since the GameStop saga began, and really enjoyed your meltdown there on the snow days. I think it was echoing the what maybe many of us wish we could do, but we can't. so well
That's
done.
what that's what Silver Chris is here for. And
And
I don't know if the folks come for the JP Morgan parking garage coverage or the Federal Reserve or both. Although, Jorge, I guess enough chit chat. These markets are moving quick. Let's dig right
yeah.
in here because let's see, in the past 24 hours, things that have happened. Well, I'm going to make a shocking revelation about my dark side on the air. I have some weird hobbies, including yesterday. I actually sat through about 10 minutes of Jerome Powell talking to Senator Congress or whoever he was
Yeah.
mouthing off to. Fortunately, I put it on double speed so I wouldn't like put any extra dirt in my brain than
Yeah.
needed. But it was amazing because in the last 24 hours, he talked about how COVID is raging out of control again. I mean, the way this
Yeah.
guy, I didn't know if it was doing a Fauci impersonation, but I mean, he gets up there and it's like, watch out. Then the Fed goes down. Then, as we find out a little bit later, while the Fed goes down, or after, or while during the Fed goes down, we see round two of face ripping short squeezes arrives as hedge funds pile into shorts. I hear that, again, this is the unofficial rumor mill. I don't think
Yeah.
it's a rumor, but I've heard people speculate that essentially during those hours where the Fed was not able to wire cash, all heck broke loose. And well, something happened. So Jorge, now we have short squeezes again. I have not gotten any word whether the Twitter hashtag counts of Silver Squeeze will justify us even talking about it, or if we're just silly fools hanging
Yeah.
out Wall Street. But what do you make of all this stuff that's happened there in the last couple hours?
Well, Chris, it's pretty crazy, really, really crazy. I think starting from what happened with GameStop, and then the subsequent days where I think for the first time a big audience of sort of a different investor from what's normally attracted to the silver market started looking at the market. I think for the first time, a lot of us who've been following the silver market for so long, starting to see that this could really happen. I think that announcement from the SLV about the hardship they're having sourcing the actual silver.
What?
I mean,
I'm sorry, Jorge. What are you talking about? Hardship sourcing silver? I've been listening to Goldman Sachs's fantastic coverage. JP Morgan, they don't offer as much public commentary, but what are you talking about? I'm not understanding.
Yeah, I know exactly, and I think we've all known that, but to see it written in their prospectus is something else. And I think for the first time, you all of a sudden have a big audience of people that were not necessarily market participants. Even for myself, I still had a little bit of SLV that I've liquidated that and bought the PSLV.
Yeah, there we go.
I spoke to a number of investors, in my day job as CEO of Reyna Silver. I had the opportunity over the last 2 weeks to speak to a number of investors, and spoke to a couple of funds who told me they've taken a position. Some of them had SLV, liquidated that. One gentleman in particular here in Hong Kong had quite a large position on SLV, and he's started the process of taking that SLV into PSLV. Some of them actually have the possibility of taking physical silver. So it really feels like there's so much now that's gathering momentum in so many ways. But at the end of the day, I think the going back to your original question, I think at the end of the day, the interest rates at the moment, as long as that yield curve remains the way it is, I'm very interested to also in conversations. And again, I don't necessarily have all the data to substantiate this, but I just in my day-to-day conversations with investors, a lot of people looking at crypto, and I think that has taken, if not, there's a big debate as to whether it's taking the wind out of gold and silver. A lot of people think not, and I think especially I've heard some of your guests discuss this topic. Whether it is or not, it certainly has taken some wind out of precious metals. I'm really looking forward to see what happens. Over the next little bit. I was really disappointed 2 weeks ago because I really thought when the Reddit group started piling into silver, was it 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago? I really thought 3 weeks ago. I really thought this is it. It's just going to start going up. But I think it's just a matter of being patient. I think it's hard to see how they can keep this going in terms of keeping the silver price suppressed. I mean, actually, Chris, out of all because you had a very impressive lineup of guests. Out of all the guys you had over the last 3 weeks, I have to say some of the guests that you have who are in the bullion and in the coin business. I mean, sort of some of that anecdotal stories are really incredible, huh?
Well, that's what I found interesting. I'm sorry, I was trying to pull something up. You'd be surprised what you see in some of the comments of these videos. Yeah. Apparently, someone is interested in buying a lot of physical silver on Friday. I saw somewhere in there last night. But
yeah,
Jorge, I think you're completely spot on because there's the things that we can prove with our rational, logical mind and data and facts. And then I think there's also a level of which when we want to accomplish not just trading, but any area where you need to have trust in your ability or faith or take a little bit of that leap of faith. Certainly as a trader, that was one of the things I was trained. If you only go when it's 100% chance, you're not going to trade. You're not trading optimally.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think about a lot. You've heard me talk with the guests a lot. And if you saw David Smith the other day, who's there for the Hunt brothers, you said you saw the panel with a lot of these guys that, have seen 1980. They've seen 2011. They've seen this. And even a couple of weeks ago, we had a panel where David Morgan's saying, all right, I understand it hasn't happened and I don't have a crystal ball, but I've never seen anything like this in my career. And you see one after another saying that.
Absolutely. That's when same as you, Chris. I obviously I follow a lot of this for a long, long time. But just hearing the lineup of guests that you have saying the same thing, unprecedented, what we're experiencing. I think we're in many ways in uncharted territory. Is just the volume of money that's been printed. And the influence that the central bank in the U.S. is having over the economy, having somebody like Yellen, as part of the administration, we're, I guess, in many sense under chartered territories and seeing how precious metals react. But in the other hand, just look at the amount of things that are just piling behind silver, in terms of supporting higher silver prices. It's pretty staggering. I in your channel you cover a lot of what's happening in the U.S. and North America. Here in Asia, on my day-to-day, I get to have a lot of conversations about silver with for instance the end users. Certainly, speaking to a couple of trading companies here that bring silver. There is now a concern among off-takers about the physical supply for industrial purposes. I think that is something that's very important to keep our eyes on, because just the way that it happened with platinum, just not that long ago. If there's any rumor that you won't be able to deliver, what happens if all of a sudden car manufacturers, solar panel manufacturers are not able to get their hands on the physical supply? I think that's a very important part of the story, that at that point then it becomes really hard for for the central bank to keep and for the banks to manipulate that price. So I think it's just a matter of being patient. It really, there's such a strong case for silver. Like as you see all the assets racing, to me silver just becomes more and more attractive every day. I just personally have kept buying more and more.
Did you say silver is shining right now?
No, what's say that again? You mean like just right now?
Say that again.
Sorry, what did you say?
I was just interrupting you to make a punny joke. I
see.
Silver is shining right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Jorge, actually, it's interesting, and again, I appreciate you mentioned platinum. I would suggest it might be wise for folks to keep. It's up 25% in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Also, here's another thing. Maybe we don't need to get into now. I'll just point out. It's interesting. You see like some similarities in the charts, like 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
New York time watch out. I actually was joking about that last night. Made some message out on Twitter saying, see, blue and red are the last 2 days. I'm like, I don't know. I guess watch out at 8 o'clock. And then sure enough, there they are. Although Jorge, as I'm sure you know, the CFTC is probably going to be right on top of that. I'm sure they're having meetings with the SEC and Joe Biden right now to clean up this fraudulent trading. But just in case that's not happening, you touched on something that I thought was pretty critical, and especially given that you're one of the people that, and I think this gets lost, where it's like, all right, silver market, maybe it's manipulated, maybe not. Like, this silver has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, that
you're one of the people
that's absurd.
Going to be counted on to bring it to the world.
Yeah.
And can you touch on what you've been seeing again on the industrial side? Because I've actually been hearing from dealers that there's more pressure on the industrial side than even retail right now, which is certainly unusual. And you touched on it a little bit.
No, absolutely, Chris. I'm very happy to talk to you about that. I'll tell you, I started looking at this about 3 years ago, part as my rationale to start investing in silver. I had I did have an opportunity to go to Japan, and I discussed silver with a number of the Japanese car manufacturers, also with Samsung Electronics. I don't know if everybody might be aware of, but they have a division called Samsung C&T. And I had a breakfast with one of the senior executives in Mexico City from Korea, who was in Mexico at the time, and he was explaining to me that is something that's constantly in their mind, being able to have that supply of silver, because, it's a vital component for all their electronics. And, your viewers can verify this because there were a number of public announcements, but Samsung has actually done specific financing deals of prepayments of silver with Mexican mines that are listed in the TSX. One of them, Avino Silver, where, they prepaid, off the top of my head, 2 years of production to make sure that they had, guaranteed supply of silver. And when I had breakfast with this gentleman, he did say to me that's the one thing that really sort of keeps us up at night is our raw material supply, and especially for something like silver that is so critical. And then, here in China, I had also a very interesting breakfast with a senior executive of a Chinese mining company. And I don't think a lot of your viewers might realize this, but China is actually one of the major producers of silver in the world. It's either number 3 or 4th. And doing mining in China has become extremely difficult because of environmental concerns. They've made it very difficult to permit. So many of you might be familiar with Silver Corp. It's one of the mid-tier silver producers. Their main production comes from China. They had a couple of smelters right next to their mines. And, I'm sitting here in Hong Kong. Silver Corp's operations are just across the border, and it's a province called Guangdong, where Shenzhen is. That's where Foxconn, Samsung, all these big manufacturers have their factories. So a vast majority of the silver that gets producing around the world comes to the ports just next to Hong Kong in southern China, and it goes into these products. Now, keep in mind, in 2019, either 19 or 20, I think 2020, India bought the equivalent of entire world production of silver for jewelry and savings. When gold goes up, a lot of Indian people resort to silver. So that's I mean, okay, that's 1 times world production. Then China also bought something close to the equivalent of world production for investment. 70% of silver production gets used for industrial purposes, and then the SLV, purchase the equivalent of daily world production every day. I mean, that doesn't add up. Just from a simple math. We've already, we're buying, or at least claiming to be buying, 4 times world production. And unlike gold, silver gets consumed. It's not stored as much. Of course, there is some jewelry and bullion component too. But, I think it's important to keep an eye on that. I know that all the electronic manufacturers, car manufacturers, solar panel manufacturers are looking at this. And by the way, Chris, it's not just for silver. It's now across the board. Across the board. You look at copper, you look at platinum, palladium, you look at all the battery metals. So it is something I think is very significant. I started my career in the commodities world. In the middle of the last cycle in around 2009, 2010. And very similar to then, but I think this time it feels a lot bigger.
Yeah, and Jorge, I just want to repeat this again, make sure I heard it right. But did you say you've talked with some of the industrial users of silver?
Yeah.
That are creating forward agreements that are essentially cutting
that's
the
correct.
COMEX out of the deal?
Well, absolutely, and there tend to be small. There tend to be small deals, and I haven't followed through, but your readers could look at the press releases if you just do if you just Google Avino Silver, AVINO Silver. It's a TSX listed company that produces in Mexico, and then type Samsung. You'll see the press releases there. They share the structure of the agreement. As I remember, it was some sort of prepayment, and so it's yeah, that's right. So that's from 2018. That's around the time when I had this conversation with this is from 3 years ago. So you see there, what was it, $6 million loan.
So we already have companies, again, I know I'm repeating myself. I think it's that important. Confirm if I'm getting the language correct. But basically are cutting the COMEX, have already been, for a couple of years in, cutting the COMEX, making preparations so that this system that seems, the only reason I've gotten of why investors wouldn't take delivery of the COMEX this week, given that there's an economic incentive on the board, there's free money on the board in the form of an ARB. The only answer I've gotten is that the COMEX is a pain in the ass. And now we see that silver miners and industrial users are saying, we realize the COMEX is a pain in the ass. We realize the COMEX is absolutely silly.
I don't necessarily think they're that worried about the COMEX. I think they're really, on a more practical level, they just really want to make sure they can have a supply, because you have to remember, Chris, there's another component to all of this. I mean, this is only referring to the primary silver production. Primary silver production is only about 30% of world production. So all these companies that you see with production in Mexico, First Majestic, Pan American Silver, those are the primary silver productions. That production only accounts for about 30% of world production. The majority of silver comes as a byproduct of nickels, copper, gold. And so, for instance, a lot of the Japanese manufacturers, whether it's electronics or cars, they actually have their own mines, for instance, for zinc and copper. bring the copper concentrate, the silver concentrate, refine it in Japan, and then those Japanese refineries are then distributing to the car manufacturers. For instance, Japan has a very elaborate system for their raw materials. Samsung does a lot of the procurement, does the mining. China has a similar system. So I think that the COMEX is more relevant to the pricing of the silver and to the to people buying it for investments. I think the last time that silver went up to $45, really the driver was the demand from investors. So I think that it's a very interesting topic to study the role that the industrials have in silver. I think we all know this, that the growth is increasing. The biggest increase in usage of silver is solar panels. We all know what's going to happen with the Green New Deal, not just in the U.S. but around the world. The tendency is becoming very strong. Something is going to give at some point, and I think I appreciate a lot listening to all your guests who give a perspective that I don't have as much knowledge on. But I think it's interesting to look at the industrial demand. It seems like silver is stuck in a little bit of a limbo between being a precious metal and an industrial metal. And, in many ways, it is a little bit of both. But, in both ways, if you hold it as a store of value, there's a very strong case for silver. And then if you're looking at it as an industrial metal for supply demand, it's also a very strong case. So, I think definitely a great thing to look at and study.
Well, I thought so. In my recent studies of the silver market, it appears like some of the bank research does not feel it's that important, but that's why I like listening to you rather than Jeff Curry of Goldman Sachs. Actually, that's well, I love listening to both of you for different reasons. We'll just leave it at that. And by the way, I'm getting a ton of emails, so people, please don't send tons of emails because I can keep researching. But if anyone finds out that Jeff Curry is on TV today, please then let me know. Jorge, a few things you mentioned building up, and I know I promised a little bond talk in the headline today. I don't want to disappoint on that. Yeah. Here's what I was mentioning before. Again, hey, this is a comment on YouTube. Take it what you will. Although I saw this same comment posted several times in many of my videos. I mean, this could be just, hey, someone just sharing his thoughts in capital letters, or to the degree of when you think about how marketing works, when there's a message that people are interested in, especially if there's truth behind it and it's repeated, especially in the financial market, stuff like that can have an impact. Because again, while, you look at CNBC, here's the front page. Obviously, the most important news today. I'm going to apologize to our audience. I didn't ask you about Trump's tax returns. Here's GameStop. That whole thing about the Fed going down, the bank-to-bank payments, that unimportant stuff, nowhere to be found yet. Interesting. Here's silver. Getting clobbered 8 o'clock again. This is weird. I don't know if you guys ever end up with any rhodium in your project, but rhodium, which most people don't know about, up to 24,500. We see was 17,000 at the beginning of the year. So it seems like something's happening, but really perhaps even more important than my silver fetish or, stock market or anything, I would keep an eye on this.
Yeah.
I mean, we're sitting here on February 25th, 2021, day after the Fed went down for a couple of hours, which I'm sure is just, I'm sure Jerome, maybe Bernanke came over and they were trying to explain gold to him, and he finally got it. 6 weeks later, he knocked a coffee over the keyboard and the whole thing shut down on the global economy. Yet let's look at just the year to date. I mean, it's a little early to say, but it sure seems as if there's an exodus going on out of the bond market, at least over February. I mean, the fact that the SLV and the Silver Trust had to change their prospectus in the middle of the night, then send the authorized participant out on send him out like he's doing a media tour. He never mentions any of that. And people, the bond market is getting clobbered. What do you make of all that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really perplexing, right? I think like I said before, we really are in a little bit of uncharted territories, just because there is on the one hand, just a massive amount of stimulus that I don't think anybody had seen before. I think also one thing that I've noticed is almost all the assets are going up at, almost every single asset. So I mean, it's silver for all. I mean, if you sort of see it with a little bit of perspective, maybe for new participants it's been a moderate increase, but for those of us who've been following silver for so many years, to see it go from 12 to 30, I mean, that is a very significant price increase. And you do get a sense that until there is a more negative sentiment against the US dollar, against the US economy, and also these assets that are very liquid, like Bitcoin, obviously all the tech stocks, you do get a feeling that as long as those remain strong, it's going to be hard to see major inflows into silver. But then once that changes, it's just not going to take a lot. The silver market is so small, and I think I think I still think silver, no matter which perspective you look at it, it has a very strong case going forward. The bond rates, I mean, can they hold? It's a very hard to understand. How the with everything that's going on, I guess it's
by negative yielding treasuries. Is that what you're trying to get at?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because the reality is, well, I mean, I was listening to a podcast the other day about the how inflation has been accounted for, officially. I mean, the inflation is obviously there.
No. Jerome Powell said it's not. It's contained, man. It's soft. Even on 2 days ago, that man even talked about how they're looking at an average, and he was kind enough to reassure me that if inflation dips at some point, it's not like high enough yet, they'll overshoot to get the average boosted. So if we only have like 20% inflation this month and the real target's 40%, we'll get 80% to not 60 to like get a midpoint there, but balance it out. So,
but Chris, in a way, like my big takeaway from the last 3 weeks is, it's in a sense made me look at silver a little bit differently, because, I was just thinking about, just say as your personal investments. I mean, do you really want to be holding U.S. stocks in your account? Maybe a little bit, but it's
silver stocks count.
Well, or then think about cash. Do you really want to be holding U.S. dollars? No. Do you want to be holding bonds? No. Do you want to buy real estate? Doesn't really seem like a good time. I think silver is almost, you just have to be really patient. Silver and gold. I think platinum and palladium are interesting as well. It is, we're moving into a world where you really are going to have to be defending your wealth, against like the craziness that it's unprecedented, the amount of printing, the amount of debt, the amount of unemployment, what's happened with, especially in the US, where they've closed the moms and pops to the benefit of, Amazon and Target and Walmart. I mean, we're walking into a new world where, you're just going to have to, we're all going to have to make sure we have, of course, try to make as much money as we can, but also to be sure that we have protection. And I think we just have to stick to silver, keep monitoring the market. I really think the possibility that something major happens for silver this year or next is very, very high.
Well, obviously, we will all be waiting for Lord Curry's analysis on the latest developments. Although, Jorge, I know you have a tight schedule because I hear there's some channel called Arcadia Economics where they're waiting. Your fan club is waiting for a quick update on
Yeah.
Reyna Silver. They heard David Smith talking about you guys the other day. Can you
Yes.
just give the website real quick and then we'll hop into that
Absolutely.
other window and let folks know the latest news?
Yeah. So our website is reynasilver.com. You see it here in the screen, and we're an exploration company. We we started this company about 3 years ago, really recognizing how little money has been invested in the sector, and very few. I mean, that's another thing, Chris. So few silver projects coming online, and the ones that are coming online or the ones that are in production have very low grade. So we wanted to put in a company that had a portfolio of exploration projects that have high grade silver potential. And we've went public in 2020. We've actively exploring 4 projects, 3 in Mexico, 1 in Nevada. Our main project is called Gigi. It's one of Mexico's largest silver districts. It's produced very high grade silver since the time of the Spanish. We're drilling 10,000 meters there at the moment. We've completed about 3,000, the first 3,000 meters. And we're going to be drilling this asset throughout the year. We also have the Batopilas project, which is an old mine. It was actually Mexico's highest grade silver mine. It was put in production by an American company in the late 1800s, went into production up until 1912, closed with the Mexican Revolution. Highest silver mine to have ever been in production in Mexico, has been sitting there with very little modern day exploration. And we started exploring this project in October last year. We just released some results about 3 weeks ago. And what we found was extensions to some of the known veins and some of the veins that were in production. We took about 300 samples. We had some abnormally high silver grades. I think the highest grade was 42 kilos per ton silver. That's 42,000 grams per ton. Just to give somebody who might not be familiar with mining grades, the average mining grade is about 100 grams per ton. So we had 42,000 grams per ton on a newly discovered vein. And then we have our project in Nevada and another project in Mexico. We're actively pursuing our drill permits. And the idea is to keep advancing and drilling these projects throughout 2021. So I think for any of your listeners who are already invested in the silver through the metal, do consider our company. It basically, if you track our share price with the silver price, we're very much tied to silver prices. And then in addition to that, as we have successful exploration and advance our projects, our market cap keeps appreciating. So anybody who's interested, there's an email there, info@reynasilver.com, which forwards to my address. Happy to chat with anybody who's interested in our company or any questions that you might have. I'm very happy to answer them.
Well, I appreciate that. And folks, I'm going to paste the link in the chat description because we're going to take a quick look through the latest drill results. So Jorge, thanks again for joining me and talking about the short squeezes, bond yield spiking, everything else that's going on. And folks, just hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, and that'll pop right up and we'll be back in a moment.
Thank you, Chris. And